So tonight we do have two moderators joining us to assist us with this roundtable. They'll be asking a lot of questions and moderating, but we definitely would like all of your input and feedback because you guys have some great ideas also. So with us tonight, we have National Collegian of the Year, Travis Brodbeck. He is actually the VP of Chapter Operations for the Albany Upstate New York Alumni Chapter. Recently a VPCR also interim, but he's been stepped away from that role, but he has done a lot with alumni engagement in the past. So we're excited to have him. Also with us tonight, we have Caitlin Kaminsky. She is currently the VPCR for Kansas City Alumni Chapter, but previously she also served as the VPAR for Kappa Omicron. So I am going to turn it over to the two of them. Thank you both for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you, everyone. I mean, I know that Caitlin and I are so excited to be here with you all, and kind of tie back to what Heather said before. We do not want to be the ones talking tonight. We're only here to be like the traffic guards of your amazing ideas and conversation, so we can create the best highway to lead us to the road to success. So I'm really excited that we're all be here. If you're able to really get, lean forward, if you're usually someone who's kind of quiet, and if you're someone who likes to participate a lot, lean back and give other people a chance to kind of speak. And always remember that, this is a place where we brainstorm and come up with good ideas. So never put each other down. We're going to do a little bit of improv. Yep, yes, and then build on ideas. So I hope that'll be pretty exciting. And I'm going to let Caitlin kind of start off the conversation with a kind of question. We'll use the raise hand feature with Zoom. So if you're not familiar, you can find that in your reactions tab. We just want to kind of get a feel for, who's here. But also give you a chance to kind of look around for yourself. And that's why we like the raise hands feature. So wonderful. I'll pass over to Caitlin.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, we just want to know, for those of you in your position, how many of you are in the position for a year, a full year? Okay. And then how many for a semester? All right. Seeing kind of a split. Is that what you're seeing, Travis? Ish? Cool.
A little bit more on the year side, but yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So for those of you who are in those positions, did that start here in the fall? Raise your hand. Maybe. Okay. Fall. Cian. Maybe. All right, sweet. So I'm going to guess the other half of you then started in the spring, January. She's love it. Awesome. And then my last question is, oh my gosh, do you guys have another DSP chapter within 25 miles of you? Raise your hand if you do. Also, one last question that I just thought of. How many of you have an alumni chapter associated in your area? Oh, yay. That makes my heart happy. Cool. That's definitely helpful for us to kind of know who's here. So the first topic that we kind of want to talk through is communication. So this is kind of where I'm just going to ask questions and let you guys start off the conversation. So we're talking about communications. What methods do you guys use to reach out to collegiates and maybe even obviously collegiates, but local alumni? Do you guys use Facebook, Instagram, email, GroupMe? What do you guys tend to use? You can come off mute or send it in the chat, whichever is best for you.
Hey, this is Essie Weiss. Email.
Email.
Yeah, I'm relatively new to this position, and I've only been able to reach out to one alumni via both email and text messages so far.
So I'm getting a lot of email. Do you guys use social media pages at all or groups?
What I'm seeing in the chat, Caitlin, is a lot of Facebook and a little bit of Instagram.
Love that. Awesome. And how often, if you guys are emailing and sending out those communications, how often are you doing so? Monthly, quarterly, twice a year?
I send ours monthly.
Yeah, say monthly.
Mhm.
I'm curious, what do you put in those monthly newsletters?
I just kind of send out like what we've done. So like we just did recruitment. Our president last year got an award, so I put her on the newsletter. We're doing a fundraiser for a chapter in New Orleans, I think, that just got hit by the hurricane, and so like I sent the link out to donate. And so like just other things like that. So I'm about to send out the September newsletter. I haven't gotten started yet, but it only takes me like a day. So we just got our new pledges. Yeah. And then what else? Oh, we're doing a I guess that will be for October, but next Tuesday we're doing a TikTok off instead of a dance off with the Atlanta alumni chapter, and so like that will probably go in the newsletter and stuff. So yeah, just like events that we do and keep them updated, and yeah.
Can we elaborate on the TikTok off, one of the two of you? I'm very intrigued by this.
Okay, so basically what we're going to do is during chapter next Tuesday, we're going to split up into groups, and we have 15 minutes to develop a TikTok, and then AAC will be on Zoom, and then we'll like show them the TikToks, and then they'll vote, and then whoever wins, they'll get a prize or something.
So the alumni chapter is not participating in creating TikToks?
They're just going to vote.
Because
Yeah,
I'm
that was a
disappointed
big
by
thing.
that.
I couldn't get the chapter on board if we were making TikToks. So
All right, we need another set of chapters around the country too, and to do this and include the alumni. Who was the other one who said they set out monthly? Was that you, Lauren?
Mhm.
What do you guys include in yours?
So for this newsletter, it was pretty dense. I'm revamping. We do an alumni mentor program, and I'm changing it from being a one-to-one program to being a tiered system, so that like somebody who's like a new brother doesn't necessarily need the same information as somebody who's about to graduate and become an alum. And so I'm kind of creating a tiered system so that they can pass the information down so that it's like more pertinent for each audience. And the alumni seem to be a lot more interested in it anyway, which is good for me. So yeah, that our new like executive committee, we've had quite a few like welcome back events because we can now do stuff in person. So photos, and then I also do a throwback at the end with like a throwback memory and like pictures just to keep them involved. And I get pretty good like reach, like people open it, people respond. So yeah.
That's awesome. I love the throwback photos.
Yeah, I did one. This most recent newsletter was a 2016 Rose Games picture that like people loved. So I actually haven't been to the Rose Game, whatever it is, because COVID started while I was pledging. So I'm excited for the next year's.
Does anyone know what the Rose Games are?
Oh, you guys don't have them? I think it's a New England thing. Yeah, Paul, do you agree? Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. Started when I was RVP, so it's been a while. It's been a while.
Love that. Daniel, did you say you send them out quarterly?
Oh yeah, we send out quarterly newsletters regarding like programs and events that we're having in that specific quarter. So, and I'm actually planning on sending it out tomorrow since it's our first day of school. So.
Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
That's awesome. So what best practices have you guys found work for you when you're communicating with alumni? Like, are there any tips and tricks that you found have worked for you that you want to share? No? Mm-hmm. Do you guys notice a difference between like when you post something on Facebook versus sending an email? Do you see if there's any difference in the engagement between those two communications?
think like Facebook messages, they tend to be like more informal, and in emails they're more like professional and direct, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess coming at it from a different angle for the alumni here, what do you guys prefer? Like what communications do you find reach you best?
Email and text. There's so much happening on Facebook. I'm probably just never going to see it if it's there.
I actually prefer Facebook. I feel like stuff in emails get lost with all my other work stuff going on.
I would say a lot of the collegiates don't have Facebook. So I've had to, in my past role as DD, and speaking with their VPAR when they were trying to plan an alumni panel, I was like, oh yeah, create a Facebook event. She was like, I don't have a Facebook. So that's one thing that I've noticed with communicating with the collegiates. It's definitely a little different in terms of the social media we use. But for me personally, I always tell them, email me first. And then if it turns more informal, then we can take it to a text. But I've also had some collegiates, and maybe it's just because you guys have all grown up on your phones and it's easy to text paragraphs at a time. But I recently got a text from a VPAR that could have been an email because it was that long. So I just politely said, hey, for me, it's totally fine because we'll end up texting anyway, but maybe when you're, reaching out to other alumni and it's turning into a paragraph, send them an email first. And then you can always turn it into a phone call or a text message conversation. But yeah.
I'm going to say like Facebook and like email, because I feel like there's so much going on in my life. At least I can see if there's like an event going on Facebook and go, oh, hey, there's an event. I didn't know about that. Or I completely just did not like remember it at all. So at least that way I kind of remember that it's there. So that actually kind of helps me. And then the email is good. I like, if it's going to be short, then take it to a text. That's kind of how don't send me like a mile long text or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it depends on what it is too. Like I love to see Facebook events that like Facebook will manage it for me and it's really easy. And a lot of alumni I've met feel that way. Whereas like Instagram, you lose the post and there's no way to keep up with it. But an email is great for your newsletter because I will open it and read it then. But if there's something in it I need to keep, like a date, I'm less likely to be able to keep up with it that way. So I think the combination for different purposes is really helpful. But even if your chapter's on Instagram, maybe going to Facebook, because that's where the alumni are, realistically. At least for alumni stuff, going to Facebook. You can keep the rest of the stuff on Instagram.
Heather took my point. She's done this with me enough. I was going to say it is kind of an all channel type of thing as well. I think I find it helpful that month or consistent cadence with a monthly newsletter or something, so that way I know what's coming through. But I agree, for me, Facebook seems to be my calendar, sadly. Now, well, more for fraternity stuff, so you're able to actually put it right on. So that tends to help me. But I agree, it does tend to sort of be a multi-channel approach, or just use everything you can.
I wanted to mention one more thing I just thought about for everybody who's sending monthly newsletters for LAAC. We use MailChimp, and so you can see like who's opening up the emails that you're sending out. So that's a great way to track how many people are actually engaging and clicking on, the different links and everything in there. I'm sure, the other platforms have those capabilities too, but that's what we use. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
I'll speak from the VPAR side. Just on that, like MailChimp is super easy to use if it's something you're interested in. It's something I implemented just to start getting metrics on who was opening our emails. So definitely recommend if that's something you're interested in. But Travis, I think we're coming up on our 20 minutes if you want to kick it over to kind of getting into some events and engagement.
Absolutely. And I think everything we just kind of talked about here is really where engagement starts. And I think, Paul, I want to call out the point because you took it off my first list of key takeaways here, is that constant cadence of communication is really important. So I like to use the analogy that alumni and collegiate engagement is just like recruitment. It is a year-long process that you're always marketing yourselves. You're always putting yourselves out there, and there are going to be months that you're having high points. There are going to be months you're having low points, and your goal is to really figure out that average. And so, thank you, Paul, for calling that out. I think that's the main takeaway when we think about engagement. So, one question I have for folks is when does your chapter send invitations to your events? And I'm gonna start with anyone who's a collegiate here. I would actually ask you to answer first because I usually find that collegiates and alumni answer very differently on this question. So how soon before your event do you send an invitation, for example, or how many weeks before the event starts are people being notified?
Well, I mean, like I'm new to this, so like I just started doing this semester because COVID was like my first semester last spring trying to do this. So like I'm trying to go with 2 or 3 weeks in advance to give like an alumni chapter a good time to just see if they can even make it to the event.
I think for me, it just depends on like what kind of event. So like with the TikTok event, like I was discussing, brainstorming it for about like 3 weeks or so, and then I just sent out the flyer today. And then, but like for our alumni dinner in November, I'm gonna send out a notification about that probably in like early October, just so people can come on the weekends and stuff and make sure that they can come to Tuscaloosa.
Wonderful. I saw Daniel, you nodded your head to 2 to 3 weeks in advance.
Yeah, I think that's like a good time period in which they can like, you know, plan and coordinate with us so that they can fit in their schedule.
How about Lauren?
So we're newer chapter, but like the alums or alumni know that like we have a flagship event in November. So that kind of gets bumped in the newsletter every month, starting in August. So they'll know well in advance when it is. For some of the smaller events, about a month in advance, I'll send it in like one newsletter and then I'll send a follow-up. This is my first semester as the VPAR, but I was the chair for VPAR all of last year. So I did all the MailChimp anyway.
Wonderful. And I apologize, Lauren. I didn't warn people that I also teach, so I cold call people all the time. Apologies. So that is just kind of my style. How about Brittany? When does your chapter usually send these event updates or notifications?
Yeah, about the same time frame. Also, my camera's off because my internet's a little spotty sometimes. So, yeah, usually a couple of weeks in advance, and I think that's usually the easiest, just so that we give the alumni enough of a heads up, but also it's not like months in advance.
Yeah, thanks. Now I'm going to flip the question over. If you have anything else to please share, please definitely chime in. I want to put this in the alumni corner. And I'm going to ask a two-part question. One is, how soon in advance would you prefer to receive notification? And for your own personal schedules, because alumni schedule might be different. And then the second part of that is, for your alumni chapter, how often or how early do you send out invitations before your event? So it's a two-parter, one more about you and one about your chapter itself. And I think Mary's unmuted, so maybe I'll pick on Mary.
Oh, yes. So from the alumni chapter, we try to, in our newsletter, have the 3 months ahead of time. So you know what's coming up. And of course, any big events, anything we have, scheduled, or even like leads or GCC, regardless of how far they are, we always include those. So that's sort of how we do things. However, now on a personal side, I actually got something, this is work related. I got something earlier, I guess it was end of last week, letting me know what events I need to attend next year are. Okay, so we're booking our conferences. And so I'm telling you, for those of you who say, oh, 2 to 3 weeks, if it's a big event, if it's initiation, that you should have that planned. And you need, if you're having a party or whatever, that's a little bit different. But for your big events, you need to let people know ahead of time, and not just once. It needs to be in every monthly newsletter that you have coming up. So as soon as you get as soon as you have a date and a time, get it out there. And, you know, it's not just your alumni who graduated last year. I didn't graduate just last year. Okay. My son is now out of the house, but, and Paul Carpinella knows this because he's got 3 kids who do, I call it the 3 Bs, ball, Boy Scouts and band. I mean, you know, we have a lot of stuff going on. So we want to get it in our calendar. I can only imagine, I only have 1 child, that he and his wife have 3. And there's a saying, okay, when you have more than 2 kids, okay, you have to go from playing man to man to playing zone. So he and his wife were playing zone, trying to manage 3 kids. That's a lot of work. I've only done 1, but it was, yeah. So
the lessons here, stick with 1 kid, I think.
yeah, there's a reason. No, it's, I mean, and they, all 3 of their kids are active. Plus he's still he's doing this as well. Right. So,
Yep.
you know, obviously he wants to be involved, but if it's a big event, the earlier the better.
Wonderful. Sorry about that, everyone. That is so funny. I like the zone coverage. That's a good analogy, Mary. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Paul, good call on that. I'll write that one down for that lesson there.
I tried.
I was wondering about, or maybe some other alumni too. So Sarah, you're recently a graduate, I think the last 3 years or so. What is your schedule like? What kind of advance notice do you like, and what does your chapter do?
So for our chapter, we've not been as great about getting information out to the members as we should. We've had a new VP communications, so there have been some growing pains there. But as far as with the Collegians, my welcome back email every semester has everything that we have planned, at least generally. So like we're going to do a panel and we didn't have the date yet, but we still put that in around when we'll be. So we try to do that so they at least know upfront what's going on. And they should, at a certain point, start to learn our flagship events. As far as what I like, to an extent, big events, it's nice to have the notice. But for DSP, I'm more thinking maybe within the month, within a few weeks. So if I don't mind getting something more like 2 weeks, but it depends on what it is. But at the same time, if I'm getting 2 weeks notice, I may not be available. So that's the trade-off of a lot of alumni are busy and they're going to forget about what it is. So constant reminders are really helpful. But again, if I'm free, I'm fine with 2 weeks notice, especially with working with Collegians. That's become very normal, but many alumni do seem to prefer more. So I think really the best way to get around it is constant reminders so that they don't forget about it. If they're an alum like me who's thinking more short term when it comes to DSP stuff, because I've got my work stuff that I'm thinking more ahead on.
Wonderful. And I love the contrast there, by the way. That's why I kind of call it Tracy and then Louise.
Okay, I'm gonna say I just like I put in the chat, love the reminders, need constant reminders. Because even though I don't have kids, I mean, like scheduling, juggling is still like not the easiest of things. Because I still have work, my husband's calendar, of course, and then I also volunteer in another organization as well. So, I mean, putting all these different things together, constant reminders are good because out of sight, out of mind. Otherwise, I'm never going to know that it's there, especially if it's a big event. And also if it's like going to be a big event, then, or any event really, but especially those big events, please make sure that you give us as much notice as possible. 3 weeks is just not the best. And just like somebody else said, I think it might have been Sarah, that, you know, if you do get that short notice on 3 weeks, I'm going to try my best to make it, but I may not be able to. So, I mean, that's a trade-off, just like she said. So I got to go with that. But yeah, constant reminders, and the more time you can possibly give us, the absolute better it is. And also one other thing, try to be mindful of when we work, because like if you're going to do an event, I mean, I'm out here on the West Coast, especially in the greater Los Angeles area where traffic is our friend, and we're there a lot. And Louise, you know, and I know you know what I'm talking about. So for all of us who get to sit in traffic forever in a non-COVID environment, please don't make your event at like 5:30 in the afternoon and then make it like 45 minutes away from me, and I'm going to be sitting in traffic for that entire time. And by the time I get there, it's going to be over. So please make sure that you make it at an alumni friendly time, or don't put it like 3 o'clock in the afternoon or something where I can't get to it. So please make it alumni friendly. Notice is good. Thank you.
Thank you. Louise?
I 100% echo everything that Tracy said, especially, and I would say in any area, right, where traffic sucks and we now going back in person, we have to coordinate all of that time. I think one of the great things about, being remote was it was so easy just to jump on a Zoom call, no matter where I was. But on the flip side, it's really exciting that we're going back to in-person events. So I'm throwing on my RVP hat for one quick sec because this is how this came up, and I wanted to mention it. Also keep in mind, now that we're going back in person, I know a lot of schools back here in California, probably all around, have requirements for like guest registration if people are coming onto campus. So one of the schools in my region actually has a 2-week guest registration timeline because their newly appointed DD wanted to go visit them for a chapter meeting and couldn't because it was not within that time frame. So 100% schedule everything as early as possible, but also make sure that you guys are checking any in-person requirements. If you have to do guest registration, or if the school's requiring on top of that registration, showing your vaccination status or a negative COVID test. There's so many more considerations that we have to do, to be able to be in person again. But at least that's the exciting part, that we can be in person. So just something to keep in mind there.
Wonderful call out. Thank you, Lee. I have one final question, and it kind of ties back to when we start with the newsletters. We kind of talked a lot about events right now. Obviously, when we go back to in-person events, I want to see everyone not just sticking with, collegiates talking collegiates and alumni talking alumni, mix it up at tables. But when you are communicating with folks, and this is more of a ask to the collegiates, when do you ask about the chapter leadership funds or ask for donations? Because you want to meet alumni, but sometimes they can't come to your chapter events. So the best time to meet them is at national events because they're already attending, because they know it's on their calendar 1 year in advance. So in your newsletters or other communication or at chapter events, how are you asking and how often are you asking alumni to donate to your chapter leadership fund? I'll try to put that out to any collegiate or any alumni who had an experience with an outreach. All right, I'm hearing silence.
My chapter reached out with a GoFundMe and then never followed up about it. So I'd say definitely follow up if you want the money. But it's also, we're in a region that historically is not great with alumni relations. So maybe that's part of it.
What else? So I feel that a lot of our collegiates are being quiet. Have you ever asked is the question, and if so, why?
Well, I've only been in the position for a month, so not yet. But I mean, I've asked for donations for the what was the hurricane that just hit NOLA? That hurricane. But I don't think we got anything back, honestly, from any of the alumni. But I sent it out in our monthly newsletter. So I've only sent out one monthly newsletter. I'm about to be 2.
All right. Anyone else? Maybe a different call to action. Like besides your chapter events, what else are you engaging with your lead, whether it's a collegiate or alumni? When you're communicating with them, what is some call to action? What is something you want them to do? Because sure, they opened your email. Now that they spent that 5 seconds to open your email, what do you want them to do with that information? Or how can they engage with you? So that's really kind of my question to folks. Are there any examples that you've actually sent out pretty cool call to actions that aren't maybe just show up to our event? Maybe some of them were, share, repost their stuff on social media is a simple one, and other fun things like that. So what are some call to actions, Melanie?
I actually just sent an email out this past weekend to my alumni relations in my region, and it was essentially to ask them, if you are sending out communication to your alumni, can you please include this? And it was the form for volunteering, so the interest form. Hoping that will help alleviate some of our longer distribution lists. And so if they're already doing the work, can you just include this with it and then help me do my job? So yeah, that's an example of one.
And I think that's a great point, because when more volunteer leaders means more engagement in the region, and that's going to help the chapter in the long run. And I think the last person for this topic will be Mary.
Sure. A couple things I'll mention. First of all, if someone does donate to your chapter leadership fund, make sure that you send them a thank you note. Okay. Just, a handwritten note, not an email, a handwritten note. Are given their contact information along with the donation. The other thing I would mention, of course, I think you need to make sure in any email that, the newsletter, whatever, that you're including that there is a lot of people, again, it's a relatively new thing. Most of your alumni do not know that this is there. Make sure they know that it's money that will go directly to your specific chapter and that is tax deductible. Okay, because it's right now, technically, okay, because if they would make a donation, just send you a check, that money is not tax deductible to them. Where this going through the leadership fund, through the CLF is a tax deductible donation. The other thing I would mention, if someone does donate, okay, I would make sure I put that information, not necessarily how much they donated, but just think in your newsletter, okay, thanks to these alumni for their generous donation to our chapter leadership fund, and then put their name in there. Because let me tell you what, that is going to attract more people donating to your fund, because they're saying, wait a minute, these 5 alumni, maybe I'll become the 6th person, right? That's going to generate more than anything you can do. And the other thing I would mention as well, okay, is if you do have that event, you might not feel comfortable asking for the money. Get an alumni who is comfortable asking for the money to ask on your behalf.
So great, Mary, and I really highlight that last point. I'm so bad for asking for money, so there are way other people who do a better job at it. That schmoozing.
Absolutely, and if you have to twist a few arms, you do what you have to do to get it done. But you have those people who are comfortable doing that. So find out who they are, and get them to work on your behalf.
And Heather, thank you so much, Mary.
I just wanted to point out with the chapter leadership funds, every chapter has a direct donation link, and it's in your hub on the dashboard. So if you are sending out like appeals, trying to get alumni to donate to your chapter leadership fund, look up that personalized link, because that way it's a lot easier to get the money for your chapter.
Wonderful. Any last minute questions about engagement? So the key takeaways here is, one, what Paul said at the beginning. So consistent cadence is really important. So the quarterly newsletter, if you do quarterly, keep it quarterly. And when you have your transition meetings, make sure those transition meetings include when you sent them on that quarter. Not any time within a quarter, usually on that month, whether it's March or October, whatever it is. And the other thing is, engagement doesn't have to be, just showing up to our events. There are other ways to get involved, whether to be a speaker at an event, which can help out your VPPA, to come out to support another community service initiative, like a fundraiser for folks impacted by the hurricane, or getting people to donate to your chapter directly, or sign up for an alumni mentorship program. There's so many different things, and when you provide a variety of products or services to your customers, you'll reach more and different customers. So definitely want to highlight your diversity, your audience. And the last thing I do want to recap is we heard from different alumni tonight who talked about very different levels of advanced notice they need based on where they are in their life. So Delta Sigma Pi is as not just for 4 years, it is for life, and we have this alumni life cycle and collegiate life cycle for that matter. But some people are going to be more available when they're younger and less available when they have families. And meeting people where they are is so important. So I think that really does a great job. I think we're going to pass it on to Caitlin to kind of open up our next discussion. I just want to thank everyone who has participated so far.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great discussion. Hopefully you guys are getting ideas and taking things that you can kind of implement in every situation. So that's really, really exciting. So we're kind of going to transition into kind of the broad topic of networking, which I know sounds like everyone thinks it's like a dirty word, but come on, that's literally what your position is, right? Like trying to network with each other. So my question that I have is, at national events, whether it be virtual or in person, hopefully you guys have had a chance to go to one, especially since they have been virtual this past year. Does your chapter try to make connections with the other alumni or collegiate members to collaborate during and after the event? What does that look like for you? What do you try to get out of, those connections that you make at those events?
I mean, I guess I could start by saying I first met Travis at the provincial regional conference 2 years ago and tried to go in and connect with people, but I was the only person from my chapter there. So it's hard to say that my chapter really gets involved with that kind of stuff. I mean, I guess I wanted to go and ask if people wouldn't mind if I dropped my email address and phone number in here so I could go ahead and do some networking during this event, because I'm new to this position and networking is something that I'm relatively good at. But yeah, that's the only real networking experience I've had with other DSP alum and chapter members.
I definitely get that. I was one of the only people when I was a collegiate going around talking to alumni, making those connections. And I particularly use them for my chapter because we're actually in the middle of trying to plan a milestone event. Our 40th is in November. So if anyone's in the Missouri area and wants to come to Springfield, let me know. We're still working on it. But I totally get it can be kind of difficult. Does alumni, do you guys have any experience trying to reach out to collegians in your area or connect with them?
I do want to call out Mary because she scooped me up at a provincial conference too. And she stuck me right in. So Mary, maybe you might want to talk about how good you were at getting me at the provincial banquet.
See, was that when we sat next to each other? Yeah. So, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's, I would just tell you to don't be afraid to come up and talk to people. I'm not afraid, I might look a little bit older. Okay, Heather Troyer is not that funny, right? But seriously, and if you are there by yourself at an event and you don't know anyone, come and find me. Okay, and I'll introduce you to everybody you need, right? You'll find out networking firsthand. So, for the record, one of my great joys in life, okay, is being able to help people connect with someone they might not know. And one of our workshops for the alumni chapter we're about ready to announce is actually dealing with several people that I've helped get their dream internship or dream job, just because we strategized on how to do it. And it was a little bit different, right? And I will tell you, there's numerous people I have lived vicariously through because they just had great things happen to them because of that. So again, you just, you would never guess this if you didn't know who I was, but don't be afraid. You could be one person away from your dream job or and you just got to make sure you go and find who those people are who can connect. So.
Well, like Paul and then Tracy.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I was gonna say, I agree with Mary. I think there's definitely a lot of Delta Sig connectors out there. And there are actually a couple of things you could do pre-lead events. I think one, certainly, you could reach out to your local alumni chapter to say, hey, we're having a group of brothers there. Love to kind of meet some other brothers. The other piece as well is that we have some pretty active social media groups, official and unofficial. So I'm sure if you kind of, drop some notes, whether it's in the LinkedIn Delta Sig group or a couple of Facebook groups that, hey, we're going to X lead school, love to meet brothers. I'm interested in a career in XYZ. Pretty sure there'll be someone who's going to pick that up, whether it's either someone attending that event or just someone who's interested. I know I've actually found some potential interns and been able to find some people to mentor. That way, I mean, Caitlin and I actually met last year, literally at an event like this, and we stay connected. So that even these types of events, it all kind of happens.
All right, Tracy.
I was just gonna say this kind of goes both ways, because the thing is like, back like pre-COVID, and I went to events or whatever, and I've been an alumni a long time. And the thing is like, you end up with, like, from an alumni perspective, you see a lot of collegiates that just kind of like stick together. and they don't like reach out to the alumni. It's always, and even like as an alumni, I try to reach out to them. And the problem is they're like all inclusive. So it's kind of like, you know, I'm trying to be helpful, but then they're all like sticking together in their own little groups. And most of the time they're like chapter specific groups. So they're not even like getting outside their own chapters to network with each other even, let alone the alumni. So I would just say, try to get out and talk to the alumni. We're not that scary, because I feel like a lot of collegiates tend to be like, you know, just kind of like, you know, us versus them mentality, I guess. And it just really shouldn't be that way. So I really feel like, you know, try, like everybody here has been saying, reach out to the alumni, especially, I mean, like everybody who's been saying here, I want to help you or whatever. If we're out there trying to help, then let us help and try to like encourage others to do the same thing, because it's that way you break up those little packs in the chapters or whatever who come to these things. And I think there's a lot of connections to be had. Hey, everybody who's been to one of those events, who knows about the, if you know somebody who knows somebody else who knows like 3 other people or whatever, and however many connections around the room, you'll finally get to whoever you want. So y'all know what I'm talking about. So yeah, so don't forget to reach out to us and try not to like stick together. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. I think that's awesome. I think we're going to come back to that in a moment about the scary part. But first, I do want to ask a question for our collegiates, since we've been talking about these in-person events and maybe some virtual events too. What are some events that you want to see from alumni chapters? Because some of this counts as CMP credit for you all, which is very awesome, but also gives you opportunities to really, I think the most common thing I hear during recruitment is our alumni network. And then so often I find chapters stay so isolated to their chapter network. So I would love to kind of hear, you know, what do collegiates and collegiate chapters want from their alumni chapters?
Okay, well, I guess my question to that in response would be like, when do alumni chapters usually have availability to do events together?
Any alumni chapter officers? I could speak to it, but I've been speaking a lot.
I think that probably goes back to the the pre-planning part. Sorry, you know me, I can't stop. I think that probably goes back, Nico, to some of the pre-planning part there in terms of just kind of reaching out. I think from a Boston alumni perspective. By the way, Lauren, more than happy to do joint events, but sorry, I had to put the shameless plug. But I think from that perspective, we're always kind of willing to kind of reach out to other folks. So the more kind of we have advance notice, I think we're more than happy to kind of start setting up, because we could be flexible again, but more just kind of the preparedness, flexibility there.
I agree with what you're saying. I mean, though, like in terms of days of the week or times of the year.
Literally just ask us. Every chapter is different. I can say Atlanta generally meets on Tuesdays, but if the collegiate chapters were to say we're more available on a Wednesday, then we would do an event on a Wednesday with them. Just ask us and open up that communication, because we want to do things with you. We can be flexible with enough notice. Literally just ask the question and we'll figure out something that works. So there's not one day that's better. It's not the weekdays versus weekends are, unless there's travel, of course, then weekends are probably better. But that does go the other way. As a collegiate, I remember asking, well, how do I get alumni to come to my things? And the alumni said, just ask us. So I asked my alumni chapter and they never responded. So alumni, if we're going to sit here and say, ask us, make sure to respond to that email. But it's that simple. Just talk to us and we'll work it out.
I only put that out there because, again, I'm relatively new to this VPAR thing. I tossed my email and phone number in the group chat for those of you who are interested in reaching out to me later, whatever. But like, my chapter regularly meets on Mondays for fraternity, like just regular chapter meetings. And I've already been in touch with actually a alumni chapter member that's not even at this meeting, who invited our chapter to a Founders Day event in November. And I've been trying to get members of my chapter to go to that, but I mean, it's like trying to figure out who's available when and like who can make it to the event. That's the challenging part.
And Nico, I do want to talk about this challenge just for a second. I promise not to talk too long. Collaboration is hard work. It always is. You are coordinated, and you'll find that if you master this skill now, you'll be really good in your career in the future. But also think about, it's all about the investment you're making. If you're able to collaborate this semester, then it makes it easier to collaborate next semester, and then collaborate the semester after that. And then you start getting this organic cycle that appears, and it's all about working hard and eventually getting that boulder up that hill so you can eventually get into that cycle. And I think what Sarah's mentioned before, I mean, I remember being a collegiate officer, reaching out to alumni for an event that we wanted to do and never getting hearing back. But it's about that being that persistence and trying again. So I think what you called out, Nico, is a true challenge and something we all are really familiar with. So thank you for that, Sharon. I'm going to propose one quick question, and kind of after that, we'll go into more of an open floor. And it goes back to what Tracy brought up. How can alumni be more approachable or less scary? But at the same time, collegiates, what is the best way for alumni to also reach out to you too? Because it's a two-way street for everybody. So what is the best way for us to be approachable to one another?
Well, I found that putting on makeup has really helps me be more approachable. I just thought I'd mention that. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. There goes this webinar. I think part of it is just making sure you have communication so that people see you out there, whether it's sending that email, making sure you have things on social media so they know you're active. If they, think you're not active, they think you might have died. So make sure you are, as an alumni chapter, remain active, but also make sure that from a collegiate point that you are engaging as well. I think it's a two-way street.
Tracy.
I definitely agree that it's a two-way street. And I remember back in the Paleolithic era when I was a collegiate, and we were like kind of afraid in a way of the alumni, because I remember it was almost like, us, and then it's like, okay, maybe they don't want to be involved. Maybe they're so busy or whatever. And also it was hard to get a hold of them. So, I mean, I remember kind of like reaching out to alumni. It just was not the easiest thing. And like you said, persistence or whatever is a good thing, and also notice. So I think there's a lot of understanding that needs to happen, and a lot of kind of breaking down of barriers that really needs to happen between the alumni and the collegiates, because it goes both ways, like everyone's saying. So if you give people like alumni enough notice, then they'll be able to come to things, and then they become more approachable. And they actually, instead of be like the quote alumni or whatever, then it'll actually be like, we're actually people, and we're here to help you, because there's that famous dichotomy of people a lot of times are joining because they want to get the connections and they want to get the alumni, but they're afraid. They want to get connections with the alumni, but they're afraid of the alumni at the same time. So it's just that weird dichotomy. But again, I think it goes both ways. So I think if both try to reach out to each other and sort of humanize each other in a way, then they realize that we're really kind of all on the same team.
Thank you, Tracy. Sam.
So something that I've noticed in my chapter is that some people, there's a lot of diversity in experience. Some people just kind of suck at the communicating thing in general. So it's important to kind of just keep that in mind, I would think, as an alumni, that like, hey, like maybe keep it light. Maybe don't go like full swing the first day, like, oh, where are you going to work? What do you want to do? What's your dream job? Where do you see yourself in 20 years? Like that might be a little too intimidating for some newer guys. We're a bit of a younger chapter ourselves. So I think just like, at least, early on, yeah, exactly. Humanize. Early on, keep it simple, pretend that we're 5 sometimes. Like some of us don't know a lot, haven't worked in a professional setting, and keep that in mind.
I love that, Sam, and thank you for the enthusiasm there. You got my speakers were vibrating my desk. All right. I remember someone mentioned a mentorship program. Maybe was it Lauren? Would you be able to share a little bit about that? I know we don't have much time about it, but that might be a great homework assignment for everyone to follow up with and talk and communicate with one another after we put in our emails and chats, I believe like Nico did.
Sure. So like I mentioned earlier, so my chapter is like 6 or 7 years old now, pretty exciting. And so we've had an alumni mentorship program, I guess, for the past 4 years since we had alumni to work with. And so previously, it's been like a one-to-one pairing. So we would just send out an email blast to all of our alumni, and then do our best to pair one alum to like one current bro. Sometimes you would have two bros with like one alum. And basically that would just look like, so we're a school that does co-op. For those of you who are unfamiliar with it, we basically take off from classes. We're not taking classes at all, and we are fully working, which is really cool. So with that being said, we are constantly looking for jobs, and it's not just internships. It's a job that could last 8 to 9 months. So our alumni help us prepare for that, the interview process, what it's like applying. And oftentimes these alumni have actually held the positions that we want. So it's very beneficial to get paired. And we have done it every semester. I guess this would be our 9th semester. And like I mentioned earlier, we're transitioning into a tiered format. So it's more of a pyramid in terms of the dispersal of information, which is going to take a lot of the pressure off of the alum, just because obviously somebody who graduated 5 years ago doesn't really care about co-op as much. It's less fresh in their eyes, whereas somebody who graduated a year ago or is going for their last co-op can share a lot more new information with our younger bros. So we've found that it's a good way to keep the alumni engaged. It's I'm not going to say it's an easy thing. It requires a lot of work from the VPAR with pairing, especially because of personalities and time commitments, but it's a great way to get them excited about seeing bros, and keeping them tethered in a sense to the chapter.
That is so cool, Lauren. My chapter never had anything like that, so I'm very envious.
Okay. Yeah. Paul, have you heard about our program at school?
No, I actually haven't. I was really pumped to hear about it now. So
yeah, so it's nice. I think it could be really cool actually though, to involve alumni from like the greater like region.
Yeah. Oh no, I agree.
Lab on that, but it's nice to have alums who want to come back. I mean, we're finishing recruitment this week. And all of the people who spoke on my alumni panel already signed up to be mentors. So yeah, they want to be there, and that's all I care about.
I think I saw Heather had her hand up before, but I also want to give other people a chance also to respond as well after Heather's done. Or
no, I was just clapping. I was excited for that. So other people have other things too. We're gonna wrap it up in just a couple minutes though. So any last thoughts from anyone?
Again, I'm new to this, so like however you guys want to connect, by all means. I'm thinking about adding my my Facebook just name on here as well for those of you who would prefer to reach out to me through Facebook. I already threw my email and phone number in there, but I mean, I'm new to this. I don't know many alumni that are part of DSP, so please reach out if you would like to get in touch.
And I think, Nico, what you just did is what Mary was trying to ask people to do, just ask. Just get out there and put yourself out there. Thank you, Nico.
So I have a really quick question for the Collegians. We kind of touched on it, but specifically, what types of events do you want to see from your alumni chapters? Because I think a lot of times we're just guessing, and it would be great if we just knew what you want to see. Do you want to see social events? Do you want to see professional development type things? Because alumni chapters tend to be a lot more social too. So any Collegians, what do you want to see from us? What would get you to come to our events?
I mean, I guess, again, the only issue I've had with trying to go to alumni events is like the alumni chapter I've been in contact with. It's like they want to do an in-person event that's at a state park in Alabama, 2 hours away. And it's like, I've been asking all my chapter members, would you guys like to go to this? And the common response I've been getting is yes, but it's kind of far away. So, I mean, I guess, I don't know, virtual events might still be a better idea given that we're all not really close to each other geographically. But I mean, it kind of depends on the preference of chapter members and like how close the alumni chapter is to the collegiate chapter. That's what I would say.
I know my chapter would love to do anything with the alumni. We, as you can tell, we really love our alumni, especially the ones that we got to be brothers with at the same time, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to learn. from like brothers in the region. So Paul, this is another plug. I will be reaching out to you via email. But yeah, like more social stuff just to get to know bros and hear about their experiences as well.
Okay, that's 9:30, right, Heather? We were prompt as always. I want to thank everyone, and I'll pass it over to Caitlin to kind of do some closing remarks, but like, you have all been awesome, so I'll shut up now.
Yeah, Travis is killing the game as always. I'm just gonna talk momentarily so you guys can kind of go through those emails and make sure you got them down. But you know, what I think that we can all take away from this is reach out to each other and actually respond. Make sure you're thinking about having that cadence in terms of communications and just starting that conversation so you guys can make sure you're working to create events that are going to work with both of you, both alumni and collegiates. Every area is different, so make sure you're reaching out to your alumni the best that you can. And you know, I'm really glad that everyone was able to hop on tonight and have these conversations. It was really great. So thank you guys.
And remember, tonight's just the beginning. Do not leave these emails on the shelf. Send out an email tonight.
I just want to thank Travis and Caitlin for moderating tonight. I think there was a lot of great conversation, and I'm hoping everybody will continue to connect with each other. Join us for our career networking hour in October. It sounds like everybody will benefit from that, but thank you all for joining us, and I hope you all have a good evening. I will keep the meeting open for just another minute, just so people can get contact information if they need it. But thank you all for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for hosting this.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you guys for all the value.